So I would like to invite His Royal Majesty King Bubaraye Dakolo, Agada 4, Ibenanaowei of Ekpetiama Kingdom from Bayelsa State, Nigeria. And he's going to be presenting on the role of traditional rulers in peace and security and conflict resolution globally. Your Majesty, you're welcome.
Okay, thank you so much. While he sets up, I want to very specially thank ICEM, for this very special event, and then to Mercy College, the collaborators for this exceptionally nice event. Yesterday, I felt the type of warmth I've not felt before in this part of the world. Mercy College showed so much of warmth, and I'm so very grateful. I don't know whether it is because of my outfit, but I think I can tell you that everyone here seemed to know their purpose in this part of the world, and I'm very grateful for that. Well, I'm obviously an African. My dress betrays me on that, so I don't need to introduce myself any further. I'm a traditional ruler from the Ekpetiama Kingdom in Nigeria, and I'm here to bring warm greetings from my kingdom, from the Ekpetiama Kingdom, Bayelsa State, the Niger Delta of Nigeria. I came in here, I think, 2 days ago. I came on Tuesday, so perhaps I'm the latest African in town. And I will have to bring some stories from Africa. In Africa, in my place, we have, it's a deltaic region with so many creeks, rivers, creeklets, and then we have the Atlantic Ocean at the other end. So we are traditionally farmers and fishermen, or farmers and fisher people. Until recently, that's been our occupation. And then our environment is oil-rich, and the vegetation itself is very, very resilient, with tall trees, tall grasses, and tall everything. The elephants there are big. The worms are large. Everything about my environment is big and resilient. And we have monkeys too. Because of the tall trees, we have monkeys. And then there's this monkey who, because of its exceptional skills, had to travel the world. He came everywhere. He was taken about because it could do a lot of acrobatics. And then after so many years of going around the world, he returned home to be amongst its folks in the forest. But what he saw while going around the world made him such that once in a while he will laugh aloud. So, and whenever he laughs aloud, his colleagues will assume that he has something to say. So this day, his name is actually Bugo. This Bugo was again laughing aloud and chewing to some nuts. And they asked him, what do you have to say today? He said, well, it is actually a big surprise. However, that while he was going around the world, he went to a particular community they call Bekama. And at Bekama, there was a man, an old man who had 2 children. And one of them was more successful than the other. And the less successful one picked a quarrel with him someday. And then while they were quarreling, he brought out a metal object he has hidden somewhere, a short one, and then bang, the more successful brother of his was murdered. The community gathered, came to find out what exactly went wrong, and they had everybody, experts, lawyers, doctors, psychologists, academics, and so on and so forth. At the end of the day, they came to a decision. And the other monkeys asked him, what was the decision? And he said, it was a great surprise. But just listen. In the other community that he went to, He said he had something similar. There was another old man there that had 2 grown-up children. One was more successful, and the other one became jealous. And then they had a quarrel someday, and the less successful one, though he had no short metal object anywhere, because that was not present in his community, but he had somewhere a donkey jawbone with which he clubbed his brother to death. And of course, after a while, the community knew that he has killed somebody. They gathered and wondered why he did that. And of course, they had everybody as well. And after all the deliberations, they came to a decision. And the monkeys again asked him, Bogo, so why? He said, well, it was a great surprise. And ladies and gentlemen, he asked them to wait a while, that he was going to tell them, and they should listen. The World Elders Forum as the new United Nations, that is the title of today's talk. Conflicts are part of life, they say. But in the world today, there seem to be too many violent conflicts, most of which have degenerated into full-scale wars. I believe you are familiar with Afghanistan, Iraq, Democratic Republic of Congo, Georgia, Libya, Venezuela, Myanmar, Nigeria, Syria, and Yemen. It's a long list, but this will just suffice for this purpose. These are current theaters of war, and as you may have rightly guessed, Russia and the the United States of America and their allies are also engaged in most of these theaters. That's making the whole world to be engaged in these theaters. The ubiquity of terrorist organizations and acts of terrorism are well known and now almost define private and public lives of individuals and groups in many countries of the world. There are also numerous religiously and racially motivated, ethnically based killings going on in many parts of the world. Some of these are of genocidal scale. In the face of all these, should we not ask what the nations of the world, as the United Nations organization, meet for here in New York City every year? What exactly do they meet for? Is any country exempted from the current scares? I wonder, while the US troops are abusing most of the international theaters, what happens here in the American soil? Let us be reminded of the recent trend, the shootings, the sporadic shootings in bars, cinemas, churches, and schools that in their numbers kill and maim children and adults alike. I think they are hate killings. The El Paso, Texas Walmart shooting 2019 injured very many and claimed 24 lives. There are a lot of them. The question is, do we just helplessly wonder where the next shooting shall be? I am wondering whose child or parent or sibling is going to be the next victim, whose wife or lover or husband or friend. But while we helplessly guess, I believe there could be a way out. Has the world ever been this low? It's a question to ask. Like the sides of a coin, one could argue for or against, but it is a different ball game for a survivor of any of the horrors in question. The victims feel an inexplicable pain. The victim bears a heavy burden of trauma for a very long time. I do not therefore think that anyone should attempt to trivialize the deep effects of any of these now commonplace, horrible crimes. But I know that spared this burden, humankind, will have been better off. We may have perhaps descended too low to feel this. Our historians say that many centuries ago, humans were secure in their safe social enclaves. Of course, they feared to venture to other lands for fear of certain death. And venturing actually led to certain death most of the time. However, with time, mankind evolved different sociocultural structures that enhanced their lifestyle and survival as societies interacted. Traditional governance of one type or another evolved accordingly. Brutal wars of conquest were waged for many reasons, including ego and for gaining advantage in commerce and natural resources. Along the line, the Western-type governments of the modern state evolved in Europe. This came with an insatiable appetite for all kinds of resources, which led to the committing of all kinds of atrocities across the world. Nevertheless, some indigenous peoples and cultures have survived all of these centuries of steady assault on their traditional modes of governance and living. The so-called modern state, though powerful, does not seem to guarantee anyone's security and peace these days. For instance, we have the CIA, the KGB, and the MI6 or Mossad, or similar outfits in almost all of the modern states of the world. Interestingly, the prime objective of these bodies is to undermine the progress and destroy other nations so as to have an advantage or one advantage or another. I think it is now getting clearer that the subsisting setting has no room for empathy at all. And without it, my brothers and sisters, world peace will remain a fleeting illusion to be pursued but never attained. Do you believe that the vision and mission of a government agency could solely be to meddle into other countries' affairs to the point of starving their most vulnerable to death or murdering their leaders? There has been no room for win-win from the onset, no room for the alternate viewpoint. The traditional win-win that is central in most indigenous traditional governance systems with respect to conflict and interactions is completely missing in the Western-type government structure. This is another way of saying that the UN General Assembly is a gathering of world leaders who have sworn to undermine one another. They do not therefore solve problems but compound them. Can the indigenous peoples heal the world? While arguing in the affirmative, I know that cultures and traditions are dynamic. They change. However, if sincerity of purpose is central, and live and let live is another reason for the change, it will properly mimic the traditional governance method of the Ekpetiama Kingdom of Bayelsa State and surely produce a win-win outcome. As earlier said, conflict resolution in most indigenous settings invariably produce a win-win outcome. For instance, in Izon land generally, my tribe is actually called Izon, but some call it Ijo. For instance, in Izon land generally, and in Ekpetiama Kingdom in particular, where I am the Ibenanaowei, the traditional head, we strongly believe in the sanctity of life. Historically, one could only kill during wars in self-defense or in the defense of the people. And at the end of such a war, the fighters who survive were subjected to a traditional cleansing ritual, which psychologically and spiritually restored them to normal. During peacetime, however, no one dares to take another's life. It is a taboo. However, should that happen, in order to prevent the escalation of hostilities, the persons who killed and his family were made to atone for that forbidden act of taking another's life. 2 fertile young females are presented to the family or community of the deceased for that purpose. You have to take some family members to pay for killing somebody. These females must come from the person's immediate or extended family. This method of appeasement puts the burden on all family members and the entire community or kingdom to ensure that everyone behaves well in the society. Let me also announce that prisons and imprisonment are alien to Ekpetiama and the entire Izon ethnic group. The idea of prison came with the Europeans. They built the slave warehouse at Agada during the transatlantic slave trade, and the Port Harcourt prison in 1918. There was never a prison prior to these in his own land. No need for one. It is only in the last, I should not bother about that, okay. I learned that while the former colonies, which include the United States of America, are commissioning more prisons, the former colonizers are now gradually decommissioning their prisons. I think this is some kind of an unfolding drama of swapping of roles. Prior to Westernization, the indigenous peoples were able to resolve all their conflicts without the need for jails. Where are we today? It is now common knowledge that there are 7.7 billion persons in this alien planet, and we have painstakingly made all kinds of technological inventions to improve life on all continents. Yet, a whopping 770 million persons live on less than $2 a day, and 71 million persons are displaced, according to the United Nations. And with violent conflicts everywhere, one could safely argue that the governmental and technological improvements have only made us more and more morally bankrupt. These improvements seem to rob us of something: empathy. They steal our humanity. We are fast becoming machine men with machine minds. These are clear reminders that the activities of a few, due to the docility of so many, are steering the entire world closer and closer to the biblical Armageddon. That predicted apocalyptic chasm that we may all fall into if we do not get active sooner. Let us remember the nuclear bomb blasts of World War II, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Are indigenous cultures and peoples capable of anything? Yes, we are. Available archaeological, historical, and oral traditional evidence points to the affirmative. There are some interesting accounts of how stunned the Portuguese explorers were at the vastness and sophistication of the Benin Kingdom around 1485, when they first got there. The Benin Kingdom is in present-day Nigeria. As a matter of fact, a Portuguese ship captain named Lourenço Pinto observed in 1691 that Benin City was wealthy and industrious and was so well governed that theft was unknown, and the people lived in such security that there were no doors to their homes. They had no need for doors. However, in the same period, Professor Bruce Holsinger described medieval London as a city of thievery, prostitution, murder, bribery, and the quick blade of pickpocketing. This speaks volumes, as far as I'm concerned. The indigenous peoples and cultures were generally empathetic. The practice of one for all and all for one, which some call Ubuntu, was the norm. The extreme selfishness behind some of today's inventions and their uses seem to be the very reason behind the palpable insecurity everywhere. The indigenous peoples live at equilibrium with nature. We lived at equilibrium with the plants and animals and fowls of the air. We mastered the weather and the seasons. We revered the rivers, creeks, and the ocean. We understood that our environment was our life. We would never knowingly discomfort nature in any way. We worshipped it. We will ordinarily not extract crude oil for 60 years, burn off the natural gas for same length of time, not minding how much resource we waste and how much we damage our world. In southern Nigeria, this is exactly what the transnational oil companies like Shell, Chevron, Mobil have been doing, polluting the local environment and destroying the entire world without scruples, and have suffered no consequence for 60 years. In fact, they are rewarded with making the highest declared annual profits from their Nigerian operations. I believe that if the world wakes up, these firms will, by all means, have ethically, even outside of, I believe that if the world wakes up, these firms will, by all means, behave ethically, even outside of Europe and America. I have heard of blood diamonds and blood ivory and blood gold from other parts of Africa, But in the Ekpetiama kingdom, where I come from, I see and live in the inexplicable effects of the wanton environmental and social destruction that blood oil and gas, as exploited by Shell in the Niger Delta of Nigeria, causes. It is like one of us starting a fire at the corner of this building, believing that he or she is safe. But eventually, the building burns down, roasting the arsonist as well. I mean to say that climate change is real, and we are all in it, and have to do something quick before its apocalyptic effect gains irreversible, full momentum. Bogor the monkey says you should listen. In concluding, I will reiterate that the indigenous and traditional peoples of the world could help in the healing of our ailing planet. Let us imagine a gathering of persons who have so much love for the environment, for animals, for birds, and for their fellow humans. Not a gathering of trained, meddlesome interlopers, but a gathering of persons who respect women, men, the cultural practices and beliefs of others, and in the sanctity of life, discussing open-mindedly, open-heartedly how to restore peace in the world. I do not suggest a gathering of stone-hearted, unscrupulous, creepy money-mongers, but a gathering of courageous leaders of traditional and indigenous peoples of the world, exploring win-win ways of achieving peace in all corners of the globe. This, I believe, should be the way to go. The indigenous peoples could help to heal our planet and bring peace upon it. I believe, and strongly too, that for the pervading fear and poverty and ills of our world to be permanently put behind us, the World Elders Forum should be the new United Nations. What do you think? Bogor the monkey says you should listen. And then in the first community, what happened? They sentenced the man to death by hanging, by firing squad. And he was eventually killed. And everyone was happy that the man has died. But what followed was again a great surprise. The father of that son, of those sons, actually died without having children, because two of his sons were killed in the process. But they were all happy that at least justice has been done. But that man had no child. In the other community, the man was actually sentenced, but what followed again was a great surprise. They said, no, we cannot soil our hands with blood. We cannot kill this murderer. We cannot. If we kill him, we have blood upon our heads and in our hands. And so, this bad behavior must have come from his maternal home. Send him there. He is hereby banished from this land forever. And so he was sent to his maternal home where he lived. This time the man had a son at least, even though in faraway land he had a son. And that son later became a man and had children. And generations later he had a son, and he became a great president of another land. Thank you so much.